Welcome to the Aiki Dojo Podcast. I am David Ito, Chief Instructor of the Aikido Center of Los Angeles, and with me is...
My name is Ken Watanabe. I am Rokudan Aikido Godan Musoshin Ryu Yaido, and I'm the Technical Director of the Aikido Center of Los Angeles.
And we have a special guest today. We have Sal LaCorte Sensei from North Coast Aikido.
Welcome. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me on and inviting me, and thank you for the time that we've known each other up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, we've known of each other for a long time, and our teachers knew each other. And you've been out here a couple times. I've never been out there, but
we got to make that happen.
What year did you start Aikido?
I started Aikido shortly after high school. It wasn't intentional. I started going to the local college. There's a college here, Lakeland Community College, that a lot of people out of my area go to. And that was probably like in 79, 80, that area. And so I was going there for engineering, and all my friends that I hung out with were all kind of like engineering kind of guys. And so that's what I did. Went there to school for engineering, but their curriculum required some non-technical credits to round out your degree. And I was always kind of interested in martial arts, and my cousin and a couple other people in my family took karate, and I always knew people who did, my friends and whatnot. So in the booklet there, they had a self-defense or beginner type class. Now I think it said Aikido, but it didn't ring a bell with me. I just saw a martial arts self-defense class. So I'm like, hey, I'll take that. It'll be an easy 1 credit, right? And I could move on. And so I shortly started that class. And within a week or two, I realized this isn't anything that I'm used to seeing. My friends took karate, my cousins, they're all, and I knew what they did. And, I practiced with them on occasion. And I go, this is not what I want, So the instructor at the time was Linda Vecchio, and she ran Aikido of Cleveland, but she had also been teaching these self-defense classes, at the college. So I went and got a drop ad slip, and I was going to try to get out of there, and I realized that I could get into this other class that was karate. So I'm like, hey, this is what I want to do. So I approached her one week trying to get it done, because if you got it done within 2-3 weeks, you could get your money back, right? And then you could sign up for something else. So I had this I just cornered her after class, and I had this drop ad slip, and I asked her to sign it, and she wouldn't sign it. And I'm like, I was really confused. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I don't want this class. I go, could you please sign this so I could get in another class? I was getting aggravated. And she's like, no, I'm not going to sign it. You're going to finish this class. She got in my face. Like, oh man, this is not going to be good. I didn't know what to do. So I finished the class, right? And I got to know Aikido a little bit better. And then, fast forward, obviously I stayed in it. But a couple of years later, I don't know, I'd been, I ended up joining the dojo. And a couple of years later, I don't know, we were at a party or something like that. And the story came up, and Sensei was talking about the story, and I butted in. I said, yeah. I go, she saw something really great in me in the beginning, so she wouldn't let me quit. And, you know, blah, blah, blah. Here I am, you know, it was kind of, and she looked at me and she shook her head. And I'm like, what? That's not what happened? You know? She's like, no. She goes, I get paid for 12 students. And if you dropped, I wouldn't have got full pay. Everybody started laughing, you know, and I felt like a real, you know, moron. But, you know, after a while, I kind of got, you know, what she was saying. And it really, that story stuck with me forever. You know, don't get too sure of yourself, or, you know, you don't really know what that story is, but that's how I got started in Aikido. I always tell people it was an accident.
So my question is, why did you stay?
Why did I stay? I'll tell you. And I think everybody kind of goes through this, you know, people do sports, and because they like sports, you know, whatever, hey, I like playing baseball, I like playing football or whatever. And it seems like as you start to, you know, grow or mature, you start picking and choosing, maybe to your ability or your likeness, what you do, right? Some people like soccer, some people whatever. And I think especially with martial arts, you know, there's so many out there that when you're attracted to a martial art, you really, it's kind of a personal thing. You kind of feel like, well, is this really what I want to do? And, you know, I had thought, you know, my only world was karate, right? That was it. So that's when I thought that's what it is, you know? I'd watch shows on TV like, you know, Kung Fu and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know, but when I actually started taking Aikido, after those 12 weeks, I was like, you know, this is what I want to do. And I just kept doing it after that.
What was Vecchio Sensei like? Vecchio Sensei has passed away, and she was, what rank was she? 7th Dan?
Yeah, she was a 7th Dan Shihan with the USAF. She was actually the first female 7th Dan in the USAF. So they, up to that point, they didn't have a female 7th Dan. But she started back in 69, I think, and or maybe a little later than that. But she started with a school called Cleveland Aikikai at the time, and I think she was under instruction of a sensei. His name was Mariyama. That's all I know about him. Sensei would never talk about him. But I could tell that she got hooked on Aikido because of Mariyama Sensei. And that's kind of how Aikido got started in Cleveland. You know, years later, I tried to probe a little bit more, try to find out who this guy was or where he was at, but it was very difficult to get information. I think closer to when she was retiring, before she died, I think he had been living in the New York State, upstate area. So like, if we knew, we could have easily, you know, met him, contacted him, you know, got him into the fold or whatever, but that just never happened. And for what reason, I don't know. You know, when he left and told her that, you know, she was now in charge of Cleveland Aikikai, and USAF was forming with Yamada Sensei out of New York, then she and, you know, Aikido, or Cleveland Aikikai went underneath the USAF under Yamada Sensei's, you know, instruction, and that was it. We were Aikikai then after that.
Well, what was it like training under Vecchio Sensei?
Man, she was tough. She was really tough. And, you know, the dojo was kind of like, you know, pretty much her home. That's all she did. She didn't work up. She had a second job for a little while, but, you know, Aikido and teaching at Lakeland and the dojo, that was it. That's all she did. So she had a core group of people that supported her. I mean, you know, we donated a lot and did a lot to try to support the Aikido, but she was tough. She was a tough Aikidoist, and she would always point out, you need to do this, you need to do that. When we go to seminars, don't pay attention to this, don't pay. She was very instructive and very precise, and very strong. I mean, there was no pulling the wool over Sensei Vecchio at all. I mean, if she wanted to throw you, man, you better just be ready. And if you didn't fall right, and she would always say, if you hurt me, you're in big trouble. And so nobody ever wanted to hurt her or grab her or give her a bruise on her arm, because, man, that would be the end of you. So you just had to practice really hard and get things right. And when you went out there to Uke for her, whether it was in front of the class or at some demo, you were on high alert. I mean, there was no messing around, But off the mat, she was great. She was a lot of fun, like to go out to dinner, and, Aikido was everything for her, 110% for sure. And she ended up being the general secretary for the USAF for several years. Might have been 5 or 6 years. She was the first general secretary. So she did the books. She organized the certificates, between Hambu and USAF Yamada's, New York Aikikai and all that. So yeah, she was really involved deep.
When you say she was tough, what do you mean? I mean, other than rough and throwing you hard.
Well, it's funny because when I say tough, how do I want to say it? There are some instructors that you see, some senseis that they're just like hard on you and they hurt you, or, it's an intentional thing. But she never did anything to like hurt you. But Aikido was always 100%. Like, she expected it, if you were a black belt or if you were a brown belt or an upper Q, like a second, blue or something, you should know these things. Bah, 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 bah. Like, if you don't know, then she would be on your case and say, why don't you know this? Why aren't you practicing more? I noticed you missed 2 weeks in a row. What? She was just on you all the time for that. There was no slack. So, mind you, as time went on, and I could tell you a million stories, but just funneling in on me, I was single when I started, but then, then I got a job where I traveled a lot, and then, then I got married, and then I have kids, and she didn't care about any of that. She's like, what do I care about what you got going on? Why aren't you here? And then as time went on, you're a Nidan, you need to be in here teaching when I'm not, you know what I mean? No, I wasn't the only one. I had senpais and some below me, but she didn't care. She was just on you all the time. There was no breathing room when you were on the mat,
Did she have an influence on your personal life?
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. When I was younger, out of high school, I had a short temper. I was, not always, but like, I didn't take any crap from anybody, no matter what, and it didn't work well when I was in the workplace, and obviously, when you got a partner that you can't be the alpha male all the time. You gotta, so that really helped. I think, if anything, just Aikido, the idea of Aikido, that, the self victory is the victory itself, and working on yourself, that's been huge for me. And that's one thing that I just keep working on. You would think after all these years, I'd have all my problems solved, but I don't. I'm like, man, I still do that. Why do I do that? I need to stop. I need to, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's a big deal for sure. She definitely had that, and she was Italian. She had a hot head too. And like I said, over time, both her as, instructor and me as a student, sometimes we butted heads too, when I started doing more things for the school, like getting involved with, the money, or we should do this or seminar that or travel arrangements, you know what I mean? And I'd be like, the hell are you doing? This isn't the way you do it. You know what I mean? But, in that atmosphere, it's like you gamble when you say something like that, right? As to whether your senior's going to go, okay, thanks. Or I don't care what you have to say. Do it this way. So, yeah, I learned a lot. And it translated through my personal life too, and my professional life at work as well. More listening, less talking, more thinking before you action.
Yeah,
Definitely
choose your
had a big
battles.
influence. And after time, that saying, I wish somebody would come up with a follow-up to that saying, picking your battles, because after a while, you almost don't have any battles. It's like, it ain't worth it, right?
Exactly.
So you do that enough, there's no battles.
What were some of the ways you and Vecchio Sensei butted heads?
I think it was more. It was more on like dojo functioning. Hey, if we do it this way, we can make more money for the school, and you'll have more money, and and she didn't care. Sometimes she would just be like, well, that's not how I want it. That's not the way it should be. We're going to do it this way, whether we lose money or not. And I would be frustrated as hell. They'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm going to have to write a check for $200. But, yeah, that would be one of them was, the operations of it, probably mostly. But she was all concerned about Aikido. So you had to do it that way. You had to do it the Japanese way. You had to, Mariama Sensei, she would tell a lot of stories about how she was trained, how rough and traditional that was. And she would always say, you guys got it easy with me. And you'd be like, what? I don't want to be in his class, I guess.
So she was very traditional.
Very traditional. I mean, we learned a lot, and after a while, you kind of saw when you went to seminars or other dojos, you'd be like, well, why aren't they doing that? It doesn't all the dojo senseis teach that? Or so there was quite a bit of that going on, at least through my head. I'd be like, why, what? I'd be so confused when you do go see a lot of different schools. So yeah. Or if she caught you not doing what you're supposed to do, she happened to like be cross the mat and you came in, you kind of did a half bow and moved down, man, she'd be behind you. Get back over there. Don't you know how to bow? There's other students watching you. They're going to do the same thing. I mean, she didn't miss a trick.
You guys ever butt heads on the curriculum, the teaching curriculum? What kind of techniques you guys taught, things like that? Or is it
actually no. No, because I didn't know anything about Aikido. So whatever she said was the deal. And we didn't travel a lot. You weren't allowed to go to a seminar until I think you were like fourth or third Q. You couldn't go with the group. You just practiced at home, so you didn't go anywhere. And then when you did go with the group, there was always instructions on what to do. So she would lay it out. This is how you do it at the seminar. And then after class, we stay as a group. We don't go out with other people. We don't this, we don't that. So we were pretty isolated, pretty regimented, and, fast forward now, I get what she was going for. You don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want your students like going off and, embarrassing you in some other way. But she kept a really, really tight ship. But as far as instruction, no. The couple times that we did kind of clash on that was the difference between Lakeland Community College and the dojo. So, I mean, obviously, I never questioned her about the dojo, but at Lakeland, it was a little bit different. And you had to do it in a curriculum kind of way. And, the 12 or 14 students there, they're not there for Aikido. They're there for that one credit. So, so eventually I ended up teaching those classes at the end, towards the end. And then she did not want anybody under 16. So, but I saw a big potential for kids classes. She didn't want anything to do with that. She's like, you want kids classes? You teach them. So I started to kids classes through Lakeland. Then she got mad. I go, you told me to. But, the revenue was going to the school. I didn't need it. So, but, so it was things like that. But, as far as, the Sakyo this or this foot that, no, never. And she was a technician, I'll tell you, because, we had to learn two different ways. You had to know the Federation way, which was she considered Yamada Sensei, and she was very vocal about nobody knows how to do Federation technique with Yamada Sensei but us, because everybody else is doing their own thing. So we would have to mimic what he did, and occasionally we'd say, well, this is kind of what we saw. Didn't you see that, Sensei? No, I didn't see that. You didn't understand. So, so then you back off on that. And then the other way was, I'm assuming she would call it Cleveland style, but I'm assuming it was the way she was taught by Maruyama Sensei. So there was a whole curriculum, Cleveland style and federated style. And we teach that today. So I've kept that going, that Cleveland style. And of course, the students in our school now, they don't really get it. They don't understand it. They just learn it. This is what we do here, and this is the federated style. But, the old timers, the old salts that are with me, they get it. They know it.
Do you think other USAF Aikido dojos do the same thing?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. So many times I've listened to snippets of Yamada Sensei talk about Aikido as a personal thing and it grows and, everybody, does it differently and this and that. And, I understand exactly what he's saying, but man, you got to have a standard somewhere. And I've had these conversations with some of our senior belts here at this school. I haven't taken up the policy like Vecchio Sensei did. Like, this is what I'm showing, and if you don't show it, too bad, right? I haven't taken that position up because they're all very skilled people, and they've all saw what I saw and did what I did. But I tried to do in a little bit of different approach, but I don't think so. I don't think this is what we do here. And then this is the way Federated did it or whatever. I don't think that's the case. It was just whatever your sensei's showing you, that's what you're learning. And it shows up on those tests. When you go to the big seminars and that, you can see it. because that's what the students are showing during their tests. It's like sometimes you could be, like, what the heck was that, But the students just doing what they were told to do. So I don't think so. I don't think there's something like that. But of course, now Yamada Sensei's gone. So when you show something or say something, you can't go, well, see, look, you can't do that anymore unless you got something that matches a videotape or something like that. They just got you now. So, and same with me, I only got what I remember seeing, and what I remember, getting beat up on and saying, this is the way you got to do it. And I just try to pass that along. So I think now it may change again, right?
I mean, even within the basic technique, there's a federation style and there's a Cleveland style. Is there that much variation in the basic technique? Like, say, Shominuchi Ikkyo.
Well, and the students ask that a lot, right? So don't misinterpret what I'm saying when I say there's a federated style and there's a Cleveland style, right? Because there's not officially a federated style. What she was saying was, Yamada Sensei is showing this. This is how he moves. This is how he does his Ikkyo. You need to know that. Because that when you're out at a seminar or doing whatever, and you're doing like some other thing, he's going to come up to you and say, what the heck are you doing? Right? And she did not want that. She wanted perfection from us. She wanted perfection. She and her point of having the perfection was she didn't want any attention drawn to us. Like, oh, they're doing it right, so I could go talk to someone. She didn't want the background static of that. And you got to understand, she was a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays we could easily say, oh, well, women this, women that. And even me growing up at the time that I have, the women's rights and all, that all has transformed over the last 40, 50 years. But back when she was doing it, what are you kidding? What's with this chick doing Aikido, man? And they were all, and like I said, she would tell me a lot of stories, which I don't want to repeat, but you could just imagine. So I think that was a big driver, that was a big driver was, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it right. And I don't want any attention, or spotlight thrown at us because, oh, well, that's why they're not doing it, because, they got that woman teacher.
Mm.
And we heard that a lot too. You have that woman teacher. And we would hear that a ton. Now it's not cliche anymore. Everybody's got a woman teacher, right?
So, but do you think that her being a woman, it was a factor as you were growing up as an Aikido student?
Back then, it was confusing too for me, right? It was confusing.
In what
and
way?
You always had your doubts. You're like, what the heck is going on? Sitting here now, I wouldn't have had it any other way. I wouldn't have changed it.
What did you realize?
What's that?
What did you realize that enables you to have that feeling?
I realized that she was a real practitioner of detail, and she was just immersed in Aikido and just, I think sometimes we think, or I think like, okay, Aikido is more than a hobby for me and I'm, focused, and she just, the stuff she would see and the stuff that she would show and be able to do, that's what kept me going. I was just like, constantly wowed, constantly wowed with what was going on. She was ill for a long time. She had cancer. She had lots of surgery. She lost the use of her left arm for a long time, but you would never know it. You would never know it, man. She'd yell at you, don't grab my left arm, grab my right arm, and then boom, nail you.
Well, it sounds like you got a very otherworld experience when you were coming up as a student because of it being a very, very male dominated martial art, that you got to see something that most people never get to see.
Oh, yeah. 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 Again, you don't appreciate things till you have some depth of perspective, right? If you don't have a depth or you don't have anything to compare it to, it's what it is, unless you have a really good foresight. But yeah, man, she just, I was glad that she was my instructor and that it worked out that way. And even in the Federation, I think a lot of them just have forgotten. They see me and they're like, who did you study under? They don't even know. They don't even have a clue, So the female instructors that are Shihan now, and, that's all being looked at but there's somebody that's, 30, 40 years before them that they don't really realize. They wouldn't be where they're at if it wasn't for her. And there were other people just right behind her. Like, I don't know if you might not know Sensei June. She was out of the Pittsburgh area. Tough little Japanese lady. And her and Vecchio, they were like two peas in a pod when they got together. It was nuts. They were really good. They were tough.
So do you think you'll continue on with the Cleveland Way and the USAF Yamada Way?
Yeah, I don't think we have a choice. I don't have a choice. We're just going to keep on that as best as we can. Our curriculum is structured that way. The senior students have been trained that way. I think that's the best that we can do is, move forward in the lane that we know.
So now that you've done all this stuff, you trained under Vecchio Sensei, and then you're the teacher now.
Yeah, and again, that's not something I had my sights on. Just kind of like how Aikido started for me, it was like a big mistake. And I'll say that. It's a big mistake, man. Big financial mistake. It's like if you were an accountant and you looked at this, you'd be like, dude, get out now. But yeah, the instructing part, there was no like natural transition or, you're now the senior student, so you need, that's not how it worked. It was a train wreck when her health was failing and she was retiring in the school. It was a virtual train wreck. Matter of fact, at the very end, I actually handed in a resignation letter to the dojo, to her, and said, I'm out.
Why?
Wow.
I'm done.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. Because there was no control. Her health was bad, so her family kind of was swooping in, her two sons, and they wanted to control the dojo. And then there was I had a senpai that, I don't know, then again, I don't like talking about it, but it was just a train wreck. And so I'm like, it's better if maybe this is a good, fork in the road. Like, you guys continue that way and I'm out and I'm going to do I don't get back to normal or something. But I just knew I couldn't do it anymore. So that's kind of how it went. And then, the 30,000 foot level, she got ill big time and couldn't do anything anymore. And basically the school closed. And it was, one of her sons, her youngest son, was trying to run it. And it was, people were just leaving left and right. And then one day I got a phone call from a couple of senior students, and they said, "Hey man, you got to start a dojo." I'm like, "What are you, nuts?" "Oh, you guys are out of your mind." I go, I forget exactly the details, but I'm like, "You guys are black belts. You guys go start a school, right? You don't need me." No. Anyways, the conversation went on, and it was funny because they did a lot of the footwork. Like, "Hey, Sal, we got a place, we got the students want to start with you." And I mean, they did like all the work. I didn't do nothing.
That's good.
That's good.
And yeah, well, it was scary.
They
It was
must hold you in high regard to choose you like that. Of all the other senior students, they must have been like, "Sal LaCorte, I think he's the best person for this job."
I always told, I said, "You guys were either really, really smart and thought it out, or you guys you don't have two sticks to root." Choosing me, that's a problem. So I thought about it for a while. And so I figured, and this is an honest statement, I figured it wasn't going to fly. We were renting. They had known like a couple of black belts. I think it was Brian. He's a Sandan with us, and his wife, and a couple other people. They knew this karate studio here, and they were looking for renters. So they said, "Hey, do you mind if Aikido comes in and rent?" And they were like, "Yeah, we'll take you in." So they had this all set up. So I said, "All right, this is what we're gonna do." I go, "We're gonna give it a year. That's it. I'll commit to a year, no more." I go, "And I'm not going to be spending money. And, we'll give it a year. We'll see what happens and see who comes back." And after a year, we had more students that I knew what to do with.
Wow.
And, they were wanting to get out of the karate place. And I'm like, "This is not going the way I want it." I was like, this was supposed to fail so I could get out of it, go do what I need to do.
What year was this?
This was 12 or something, 2013. And our next big step was going across the street in our own place. And I ran the numbers and I said, "Look, guys, here's the cost, blah, blah, blah. And we need X amount of students, and we don't have X amount of students. You guys have to plug the bill. We don't need to make a profit, but we can't go broke." So there we go. We got that location, and we were there for 5 years and just kept going. And here I am today. I shake my head every once in a while too, how it all happened and how it just all kind of just snowballed on its own, really,
So you're the teacher now. Your teacher has passed away. What do you do to develop yourself to move your level forward?
David, you kind of, it's a great question. And what's really spooky about that question, and I really mean it, what's really strange is that, I asked Sensei Vecchio that way back. I said, Mariyama Sensei left you and there's nobody around for you. All your senior senpais are gone. How do you handle that? She didn't really give me an answer. And I can't really give you an answer, man. It's tough. It's really hard to, do it. You look for those rings where you could grab onto and, try to stick to your basic things that you were taught and just keep moving forward.
How many do you still train Aikido, or do you just mainly teach?
Well, it's funny that you asked that. And, that's how we started the podcast about working out. Obviously, one of the benefits of having the key to the school is you could go in anytime you want. So I do that quite a bit. I do my rolls, I do my kimi, I go do my strikes when I can. I still travel a lot for work, so when one of the other black belts are teaching, I go in and I go in as another student and I just practice. So like on Wednesday nights, Dave teaches. He teaches at 6:00 Wednesday, every Wednesday, and if I'm in town, I'll dress up, go in. He's got the class. I tell him, don't ask me any questions. Because sometimes that'll happen, or they'll ask him a question. He's not sure, and he'll look at me, and I just sit there deadpan. I'm not going to answer any questions in your class. And some of the students that are new to, training with me in that situation, they'll ask me questions. I'm like, David's over there. I'm not going to answer here. I just want to work out. I'm going to throw you around, and you need to throw around. And, if there's a safety issue, like you're not falling right or something, I'll correct you. But I don't, and I kind of like that, go in there. I could just work out,
But you have been doing Aikido since what year?
I think I got my 6Q in 1981. Yeah, I think I started in 80. Like it was right when I started college. So I graduated high school in 78 and then started, college, Lakeland College. And that's kind of how it all happened.
So, but the thing is that you've been doing Aikido over 40 years. There has to be something that you do which keeps you going, because at some point you just go, I don't want to do this. At some point, it's not for you. At some point, it's just too much work. So more than the love of the game, what do you do to keep your boat moving forward? I mean, there's got to be something. Nobody can do something for 40 years and just go, well, I just keep doing it.
Well, it's a selfish answer.
Sure. What is it?
It's like, I love doing it. I get wacky if I don't, if I'm not go to work out, if I'm traveling for 2 weeks across the country working, and I get a little weird. I start calling the guys, or, it's something that I just have to do. It's strange. Even my family, my wife, she's like, I'm going to class. Okay. Because you go through those stages, Aikido, it's, hobby like anybody else. And then it starts interfering with things. And then she's like, well, why you really go? Nobody understands stuff.
Yeah.
It's very hard to explain. And I'm sure you've seen that, maybe that in your life, but other students and things that go on, that stuff happens, and you go through these ups and downs with stuff. And, it's to the point now where it's just like, that's just what I do. I remember when we were moving into the second dojo here that we just moved into after COVID. And I told everybody, we had to either, because let me back up a little bit. The dojo that we'd been in there for 5 years, we had to get out of there. The owners of the plaza sold out, and they sold to some kind of big firm out of New Jersey, and they're jacking the rates up, and it was just, we had to get out of there. So we had 30 days. So it was another, come to Jesus moment with the crew. And I said, look, we had a good run. We got to get out of here. There's no denying it. So we either get out of here and close up, or we got to go find another dojo. And again, they're like, we got to find another dojo. And, and things just fell into place. The neighbor I had next door to the dojo, she knew a realtor, and they just had somebody leave a spot perfect, and I met with him, and he loved us, and so here we are again. So,
So you lived a charmed Aikido life, haven't you?
Yeah. And so the story I was trying to get to was, I had even more help than I did before moving into the second dojo. And two of the people that helped out a lot with the move, with the getting the van and pulling the mats and construction were my two sons. And I remember we were like 3/4 done, and him and I were at dinner, and I says, man, I got to run up to this new school. I got to check on if, they painted something or whatever. And he came with me, and we're standing in the middle of this half-built space, and, and he turned to me and he goes, Dad, what are you doing? And it was a really weird moment when he asked me that. I go, what do you mean? What am I doing? He goes, what? He goes, what are you doing with all this? And that's when that answer came to me. I said, I got to have something to do when I retire. And he just looked at me and he goes, I understand that. And so there I am. I'm in. It took a long time to figure it out, but there it is.
Do your sons practice Aikido as well?
I have 4 kids. They all practice. They all started out, but none of them practice as of today. They all kind of fell off at different times. But yeah, none of them. But when I ask them for help, man, they're there.
Wow.
They come, I don't have to, like, I just say, hey man, I need this. Nobody else will help me. Kid, would you? Yep. Boom. They'll do it.
Wow. That's awesome.
So it's kind of nice. Yeah, it is. It kind of feels good that, that they know it means something to me.
So, you've done all these things. You started Aikido. You've done all these things. Where do you go from here? You mentioned retirement, but where do you go from here?
Yeah, I think like COVID gave me a lot of time to think, as I think a lot of people, about a lot of stuff. And I did a lot of thinking in it. And really it was, again, I'm going to use the word scary because, the thoughts started creeping into my mind. Like, what are you going to do with this thing? Right. And it's the first time where I thought to myself, there are things I want to do now with this place, with this school. Like before I was kind of like a maintenance, you know what I mean? Make sure we got enough people, pay the bills, promote, teach, do, it was just all kind of, and time passed by. But, over COVID, I was like planning. So I'm like, this, so now what I'm doing now is it's kind of gone full circle. I reached out to the local YMCA here. They built a huge, beautiful YMCA and they connected a senior center to it. So we started self-defense class for kids under 16. So we've got classes just for them. And that's only been for about 6 months now. So we've had like 3 sessions and we've had pretty good, pretty good attendance. Not overwhelming, but, we got one full-time student out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we met a lot of great kids. So we're going to continue that. And then one of my yellow belts was talking to David and a couple other people, and he came up to me and they said, hey, who's teaching Aikido at Lakeland? We saw it's in the program. And I just immediately went, what are you talking about? Who's teaching Aikido at Lakeland Community College? Like where I started, right? And so I got online and I looked, and there it is, son of a gun. There's 3 programs, Aikido 1, Aikido 2, self-defense. And as I was reading it, I'm like, wait a minute. The description in each, I go, either somebody is copying exactly, plagiarizing what we had done back then, or it's got to be student that used to be with us. So I was getting a little mad. And so I investigated it, but And I ended up talking to the PE director just Friday. And she goes, "Oh, Sal," she goes, "I remember you, blah, blah, blah. I took a class." And I said, "Well, what's up with this Aikido?" She goes, "Oh, no, we don't offer that." She goes, "That's just stuck in our cattle." She goes, "There's nobody here." She goes, "Would you like to teach a class?" I go, "Yeah." So here we go. So I'm going to try to get a class over at Lakeland Community College.
You're back in Lakeland teaching a 1 credit class. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we're just now working on the details for that. So what was it yesterday? My wife had off of work, so we're just sitting around, and I was like, I just kind of mentioned it to her. She kind of looked at me like I was nuts. And what do you think? She goes, "Does it matter what I think?" So we kind of left it at that. But yeah, so that's what's going on. I think that's what's, at least for the foreseeable future, Sensei, that's what I kind of see. I want to try to grow those programs. And I think by the time I get something like that going and we get a little, more runway behind us here at the school, and, then I got to look at how do I hand it off. And not a lot of schools get handed off. I want to hand this one off and keep the momentum. I mean, as great as Vecchio Sensei was, she never had a handoff plan. When we talked about it, it wasn't a pleasant conversation. So, but I realized that's what you got to do. You got to have a good handoff plan, not just for, business. They talk about that. But I think for the school, 50 years in Northeast Ohio, why let that go down the drain? So I think that's what's going on for the future.
So do you have some students that you're thinking of developing into the next generation of teachers in your area?
Yeah. I mean, you have to. Well, it's not that. It's you just have to have a plan. You got to have it written down. The business side of it, of course, and the legal side of it, if you want to keep it going. But on the Aikido side really is so different than that part of it. Like, it's not an overnight thing. You don't just say, "Oh, well, this senior student is going to run it." They're the most, well, when the time comes, they might be like, "I'm not running the school. I don't want to have anything to do with it." Then what do you do? Right? And you're not there to fix it. Right? I'm not there to deal with that. I'm gone. Or whatever, So that's what I'm talking about. So, and I've talked to other people, other senseis of schools and stuff. I kind of pick their brains a little bit about what they're doing. And some of them don't even think about it. Some of them do, a little bit about it. But it's a tough subject. But I think if it means enough to you, some schools are like, some of the big East Coast, North, Aikikai schools are big enough that it happens, right? There's enough student bodies there that you got somebody in there that says, "Yeah, I'm gonna be the guy when things, so and so passes away or they don't want to do it anymore." They've got that big body. Well, we don't have that many people. We don't have that 150 student base that sticks around. So, the pot is small. So what you have to do is you gotta start chirping in people's ear a little bit. "Hey, if this happened, would you be, that's kind of what I'm doing.
They say it takes 10 years of regular practice for someone to develop their basics into competent basics. And then from that, after they get their basics, then they springboard and they develop and refine their technique, timing, spacing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That 10 years to get the baseline from where you can become a competent instructor. That's, it's like being a doctor.
Well, I don't think the best Aikido practitioner is a good instructor.
That
sometimes is true.
That's sometimes true, yes.
And that's why it takes a long time. You got to give it some time. So I'm not saying I'll have all that nailed down in 12 months or I just hope I got it nailed down 20 minutes before I go.
So as we kind of finish up here, your 40 plus years of Aikido training, what advice could you give any person who's starting Aikido or doing Aikido right now?
I guess that's a tough thing, advice. Encouragement. I mean, Aikido, like we kind of crossed over earlier in the conversation, it's got to be something that you enjoy and that you like. I constantly use a quote. It's not my quote, but it's, Aikido is not a destination, it's a journey. So if you're not bent on trying to, I need to get my black belt and I need to become a Fukushidon and then I need to have my own school. If you're not focused on that and you're just focused on your well-being and improvement and enjoying Aikido and learning Aikido well, I don't think you need a whole lot of advice. I think the only thing that I would say for people that are in two critical stages, which is just starting, Aikido could be hugely discouraging. Hugely. Like I tried to get a drop ad slip. I tried to get out. So yeah. So I pay a lot of it. I guess the advice I'm going to take is that you're asking me is maybe for an instructor. I'm going to say, your people who just start, you got to spend some real time with them. Real time with them. Don't let them fall off the boat. If you can see into them, they want to do Aikido, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part is when you get those senior students, not necessarily senior in belt rank, because you could have a first Q that's been in 15 years, right? They didn't get his black belt yet because of personal things or whatever. He's in, he's out, he's whatever, right? That would be the other advice I would get is keep those people coming. Keep them encouraged, push them to where they need to go to the next level. So that would be the two things I would, as far as advice for an instructor, do it. As far as a student, again, like I said in the beginning, if you want to do it, it's worth it. Just do it. I can't explain it any other way. I think if you're looking for something, as most of us are, you can find it, I think, at Aikido more than any other art or sport.
Well, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Yeah, it's great. Like I said, it's great seeing you guys. This was a lot of fun, man.